without further ado, I'm going to invite Tajana Richards and Abigail Rowe to present. I know they should come up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Ms. Tajana Richards, Director of Entertainment Policy in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and I'm Abigail Rowe, Entertainment Business Manager. You guys know
So do we have a microphone?
Yes, we might need a microphone. Yeah, it's project. Use your theater voice.
All right.
All right, so just a brief overview of what we'll be discussing today.
Slide 2 will show our agenda.
Right, so what is the entertainment registry as it relates to the types of membership and benefits? You can register.
Online can't hear you. You have to speak up.
Online cannot hear you. We need a microphone.
Yeah, they're going to,
These might work for online.
yeah, so you just need to project that it's a bit more.
They can hear.
They hear better than us.
Yeah,
They can hear.
They're on mic. Okay,
So they hear better than us.
the fiscal incentive application.
Testing.
Yeah, we're just testing the microphone because they're so soft spoken, MC Jess.
All right. All right, beautiful. Because I don't need accent.
Okay, perfect. The fiscal incentive application and then a brief Q&A after. So let's get right into it. So just some facts about the registry. The Entertainment Registry will be the National Registry of Entertainment and Creative Industries Practitioners. Was established by Cabinet Decision number 35, October 7, 2013. The decision was also made that the ministry with the responsibility for entertainment will be the administrator of this registry. What's also important to note is that the Entertainment Registry is tied to the Fiscal Incentive Act of 2014 and the Customs Act of 2014. So what are the main objectives of the e-registry? Now, the Entertainment Registry, could you please go back to the slide before that? Sure. So the Entertainment Registry is used for the verification of practitioners to facilitate the business of entertainment. So let's say, for example, what's your name in the red shirt? Alicia.
Calicia.
Alicia.
Alicia. All right. So let's say, for example, Alicia is an actress and she has the interest in opening a bank account, right? Now she goes to a financial institution and she's told that one of the required documents is for her to produce proof of employment. Now, the institution, in an effort to verify Alicia, tries to reach out to JAMPRO, right? Now they reach out to JAMPRO and they're like, hi, I'm trying to figure out if Alicia is in fact an actress. Now JAMPRO's response, unfortunately, is no. I do not know this person, right? No, that's where the e-registry comes in. Because do you know who knows you, Alicia? The e-registry does. No, Alicia, in being a member of the e-registry, reached out to us, the entertainment branch at the MACJIS, and she says, I have the interest in opening a bank account. Could you please prepare for me a verification letter to state that I am in fact an actress? No, the letter is prepared and Alicia is able to successfully open a bank account. Right. Now, another objective of the e-registry is the standardization of the entertainment industry through data collection to support policy development as well as infrastructure for the benefit of the ECCI. So one may ask the question, what is the role of the e-registry as it relates to the administration of the JSDI? Now, the Entertainment Registry is one of the mediums through which film practitioners will be verified in order to get access to this fund. Now, this means
that registration on the e-registry is of course mandatory. Now, there are two types of membership that are being offered on the e-registry. There is the individual, which is for sole traders and creative practitioners with a valid TRN. There's also the company membership, which is for businesses with a valid company certificate of registration and a TRN as well. Now, what's important to note is that a company director or owner of the company is also able to register not just the company, but also themselves as an individual practitioner on the registry. So, on to the good part, the benefits. So, because if you're signing up on something, you must expect that there are benefits, right? Okay, so we have a slew of benefits being offered under the registry. There's the fiscal incentives benefit, which deals with the importation of tools of trade. There's the visa attestation benefit. This is when we're able to provide you with a visa attestation letter. Now, this letter will be quite similar to what we would have done for Alicia in the beginning, to be able to verify you. There's the CSME skill certificate, which is facilitated through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, as well as the work permit facilitation and sponsorship. So who can register? Who can be a member of this registry? Now, all entertainment sectors are welcome. But for a further breakdown, there's the film practitioners, which would of course be all of you here today. There is the performing arts sector, music, fashion, visual arts. There's also the literary artists. Now, I'll pass on to Ms. Abigail Rowe, who will further explain the application forms and their functions, as well as our fiscal incentive application. Thank you.
Hello again, everyone. So the forms and functions, well, Ms. Richards just spoke about the individual and the company registration forms, and this is the first step in accessing the benefits of the registry, as well as the verification and standardization, and she shed some light on. So I'm going to jump right to fiscal incentive. So the fiscal incentive is the second step in company and individual gaining access to the duty exemption provided by the fiscal incentive process. So I'm going to just give an example. So for film practitioners, you might import film production equipment. Now, film production equipment can be from video production equipment. So probably you have equipment set up in your studio, you have a production studio. So what happens is we provide the duty exemption, but it's just duty. Does not include the other fees or taxes that maybe that would be a part of that treatment. So fiscal incentive, the individual process for fiscal incentive is a bit simpler than the company one. That's what at least the entertainment practitioners have told us. Sponsorship, providing funding for activities if application is approved. Now, registered members may have activities from events to tour support, and you need like fiscal assistance. So the sponsorship would be, it has to have some guidelines and regulations. So one of the things is, are there any synergies that the ministry can benefit from with coming on board with your activity? So, for instance, events. If you are having an event, say for instance, you're having a festival and you want some support for this festival, is it something that the ministry's grant can be a part of? Is it something that we can benefit from? Is it something that we can use as a platform to promote our programs, such as the registry and its benefits? Is it that we can come here and register persons For instance, we have sponsored Rebel Salute, and at Rebel Salute, we would generally be backstage registering artists. Next slide. Work permit exemption. Now, the work permit exemption is provided in unique circumstances for applicants. So if you are an event producer or an event manager for a nonprofit, and you're having a charity event and you want to have international practitioners coming to your event, but you won't be benefiting from any funding or profit. You can come to us and ask us to write a letter to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, who administers the work permit process, asking them to exempt you from the paying the work permit fee. Now, the special circumstances is one, if it's a charity or non-profit. Two, if it is that the artist is just coming to perform for like 24 to 48 hours, and why would you want to pay that fee? So, you can come to us and we write a letter for you on your behalf to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, asking if you could be exempted from paying those fees, or if they could waive those fees. Visa attestation letter request. This is if you are having an overseas engagement outside of the Caribbean region, and you want a letter stating that you are indeed a practitioner of entertainment, and you have this engagement. Now, for that, you would have to submit some documentation such as a letter of invite from the overseas organizer or invitee, your passport, your valid passport, valid page, and if it is a tour, you have to submit like a tour itinerary. And you write that letter because entertainment isn't seen as a standard or a formal business. So a lot of times for that proof of practice or proof of employment, entertainers don't necessarily have an ID. So we are that ID for you. And so we write. So in this case, in this instance of Alicia and her bank account, is popular today. So in the case of Alicia and her bank account, it would be mostly because you need to provide proof of funds or proof of how you get your payments. And let's be honest, a lot of persons have said that Jamaicans can be seen as choppers. And so we don't know. We are not choppers, are we? No. However, because we have verified, because we know that even though entertainment is not seen as a formal business, you are. Yeah, so Michelle, that's wrap up. Oh, wrap up? 5 minutes. All right. We are a business, and our job as the entertainment branch is to unlock the business of entertainment through the e-registry and our benefits and our facilitations. Now, because I only have 5 minutes, fiscal incentive application is a PIR process, that is the product input relief process. And that is how we grant duty exemption on selected tools of the entertainment trade. It's governed by the Customs Act, specifically under the 73rd schedule. Persons who can benefit, production entities and persons who produce music production, film production, video production, event production. Unfortunately, the fiscal incentive is not applicable to all sectors right now, but we're working on it. When I assume somebody is. Fiscal incentive application, individual. These are the requirements, the TRN, plan certificate, GOJ, ID, that's driver's license, passport. Yeah, applicant's bio. So every entertainment practitioner should have a bio. Now, if it is that you are not familiar with how to write a profile, Google is helpful, but also you can call us and set up some form of engagement or some form of help for you. But the companies, as I said before, it's a little more complex. application process than the individual. For companies, you need a TRN, TCC, business plan, financial statements, most recent financial statements for your company, the company's certificate of registration. And even though we advise, please do not import any equipment before applying for the process and getting the approval. Please don't do this. The person still do it. So if you do that, we still are trying to be helpful, but please don't do it. So we need a list of items to be imported, your bill of lading, so we can try and assist. But however, if it is that your equipment has reached the port before the process has finished, or if it is that your process is ongoing and by the time the process is finished, you have been denied because you did not meet the requirements, you are not liable for any of the fees that customs will charge you, especially the storage fees are, for example. Process of companies, you submit your application to the Entertainment Policy Development and Monitoring Branch. We schedule a site visit at a mutually convenient time between an officer of JAMPRO and an officer of the Entertainment Branch. We draft the site visit report and letters. So if you are approved, the letters are drafted and submitted with your supporting documents to Customs and copy to the Tax Administration, Jamaica. Where can I access these forms? The e-registration its incentive forms can be found on the Ministry of Culture's website, or you can scan this barcode here. This is going on the 5 minutes, right? Is anybody scanning the barcode? Doesn't be taking me off stage.
And remember, I have the question and questions.
All right, there you go.
So we need to.
Okay, when we're doing the Q&A, we can go back to the barcode. Contact us. Social media, Instagram, Entertainment Manager, and our emails right there. Okay, I think I'm finished. I'm finished. Wonderful.
All right, thank you so much, Matt Jess, aka FC Jess presenters, Tajana and Abby.
You know, step right.
I know. All right, so now we'll go to question and answer. We're going into TAJ's presentation. So we have to keep it as succinct as possible. Let me see the hands of the persons who have questions, please. Just 2 persons, 3 persons. Okay, 4. All right. So I'll start at the beginning, right at the front here. Justine.
Thanks very much. 2 things. When you say all financial statements, are those audited financial statements or internal financial statements for the company? And also for the JSDI, you have to have your company has to have audio-visual production in its articles and memorandum of association. Do you also require for registration on this for a company that you also stipulate that actually the company is registered as being an entertainment practitioner audiovisual production company? Do you actually check that? Because that would help JSDI if you're already checking that. That's key.
And then that's the next. Oh, but you needed to answer, sorry. All right.
Thank you. So the first question was the audited financial statement. Yes, we prefer it be the audited financial. Should be the audited financial statement. However, if I should have mentioned that if it is a new company that we ask that you just write a letter requesting an exemption. If it's a new company or you have not yet received any form of profit, we ask that you just write a letter requesting that we exempt you from submitting that to financial statements because you're not new.
6 months.
6 months, and again, if you have not yet started receiving any form of profit. Second question was, yes, so the way the forms are set up, the profession, for companies and individuals, there's a breakdown of your company type or your professional background if it's an individual. So for companies, yes, we have a breakdown, and also we ask if you're a part of any industry association such as JAMPRO. So yes, it is quite important that you list what it is that your company's practice is. That.
Yes, but you could list it that it's not actually in your company documents.
Oh, yes, no, so your certificate your business registration certificate, which is a part of the required documents, needs to state.
So are you asking for certificate of incorporation and your memo and articles, or are you just asking for certificate of incorporation?
We ask for the certificate of incorporation.
Just two quick questions. How long will it take to verify? You know, I'm asking this because this JSDI is March 18th. And there will be people coming in to get themselves or their companies registered now. And I know that this is not a 2-week process. So, if you could let us know, are you going to be able to speak up for this process or? Can you?
Because I have 1 month.
Well, of course, we will build our capacity in the coming weeks to be able to accommodate the JSDI. And usually verification is between 3 to 5 business days, but of course, in a speed up process, we will have to be free.
And all papers have to be there for a 3
Right. All because of the video and valid.
Sorry, I wanted to add something. The way the registration works is once you complete the electronic form, it also, and click submit, it automatically comes into a designated email address, and we review it, and it can take 3 to 5 business days yet. But also, I think during this whole sensitization process, we'll know more what JAMPRO wants from us in terms of that, because we just need to know.
They were asked to guarantee 3 to 5 days. Just a quick question, work permits are not required under 6 months. You mentioned work permits, but if somebody is staying here for 3 months, right? They're working here temporarily. They're not required to have work permits.
Yes, they are. They're definitely.
I know this topic is
Not the film industry.
with the film industry, they don't need work permits?
No, they're
It
coming
depends on
from
their
less than 3 months. Their citizenship too, but it's, it's really, if they're coming from like England or America, our film crews come in without work permits.
Okay.
Really?
They have an
Yes.
exemption.
They're exempt from work permits for 3 months.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, one more. Ministry of Labor.
Just a quick, actually, it was read the link, but in terms of the process of verification for individuals, the company is basically trying to do the incorporation, it's a process of verification for the individuals who are applying. And then in terms of importing equipment, I guess that's approved in terms of the fiscal incentive. Are there any limitations on the equipment and the letter that you do receive? Is it at each time importation process or can it be the initial letter?
Okay, so first you said the verification process, individual, but it sounds like maybe, I want you to ask the question again because it sounds like there is a little mix up between what the process is for fiscal incentive and just for registering.
So I was asking 3 things in one. Sorry. First question is the verification process for an individual. What is that? How is that done?
So the verification process for individuals is simple. You just submit the e-registry form online, and it has to have the ask for social media, and they have, if you're part of an industry association. When you check with the industry association, if you're not a part of the industry association, I hope you didn't put your personal social media because we use the social media to when we check online. So we do our research online to see if you're having any presence, and if not, if we don't see anything, we're not like just strict tight shirt people. We call you and find out more. It's kind of like an intimate kind of thing where we just try to find out and meet people where they are. So if it is that you're not online and you're not somebody who has an online presence, we still have to delve down. And that's why I said earlier, every practitioner should have a profile because that profile also helps us to verify it.
Obviously, part of an industry association.
No, that's what I'm saying. We are not a part of an industry association.
And then in terms of fiscal incentive, if there's a limitation on equipment. So it's a film production, but that can be anything.
Yeah, man.
Clothes, shoes.
No.
Yeah.
So, what we were advised, and under the Customs Act, the equipment, if entertainment doesn't have a set list of what it is that the physical utensil can be applicable to, because of the dynamic nature of the entertainment. So what happens is, if it is that we're unsure of something, we have to liaise with customs, but not, that's why it says selected tools of trade, because one, 2 minutes, Sheldon, one, if it is that your equipment is also twinned with things that are seen as consumer items. So because the Customs Act needs updating front end, some of the things such as video production, equipment, you might say a phone can be a video production item, however, the Customs Act doesn't see it that way. So you'll be charged and the duty cannot be applicable to that tool. Certain equipment, given that it's a duty exemption, not all equipment attracts duty. Computers don't attract duty, and certain other equipment doesn't attract duty. So that would not be applicable to the fiscal incentive.
Can I just add a little bit to that? Sorry, good afternoon, everyone. So with that, in addition to consumables, anything like office furniture, TVs, computers, all of that is already covered under a separate incentive scheme. Any vehicles or anything that can be considered as a vehicle will have to pass through the Ministry of Finance as a separate application. So the rule of thumb really is, if you have equipment that you want to import, it has to be directly tied to production and, assisting you to execute production. So lights, cameras, C-stands, any other physical equipment for production.
All right, great. All right, so I have two more questions, and let's make them as brief as possible. And then remember, we still have access, and there is that, you can send them an email, right, Abby?
Right.
So, okay. And then we'll come to you.
Yeah, mine is very good. Is there a way to,
Okay, great.
is there a way to know if there's been a problem with the application, or like, would you be contacting people if the application doesn't go through? Or, okay.
Well, depends. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is it.
This is it. All right. So if there's a problem with your application while we're verifying it, we would call you or email you. If it is that there's a problem before submission, we wouldn't know because it wasn't submitted. But you can call us or email us and let us know about that.
Okay, all right.
That was quick.
That was submission in person or online?
No, it's online.
It's online. Yes, electronic. All right, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I hope you are able to share that last slide that has the email, social media, so you can definitely follow up with Abigail and Hajan. If you have additional questions, really appreciate it. So next, Ms. Williams will present for Tax Administration of Jamaica. As she comes up, and Sheldon will find her presentation. I just want to thank everyone for being here. And we're making moves. Thank you for giving us your time on a Saturday. I know everybody's excited, right? So I just want to point out a few persons here, President of JAMPRO, and of course, industry stakeholders, which would be everyone, right? Thank you so much for coming online. So happy that you're here. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send your questions. Sheldon will be feeding your questions, and so we can answer them as quickly as possible. All right, so I'm taking up time for Ms. Williams, and I'm handing over now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Not one of the practitioners, but am I projecting? Do I need to use the mic? Do you prefer? Yes. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Well, it is always a pleasure to partner with JAMPRO on these events. We have done so before, and I think successfully, and I'm sure this engagement will be a success. All right. So the presenters who went ahead of me, I heard them talking about touching on the TRS, the CCC. What is that? So this afternoon, I think I have a million slides.
Oh, yeah, you do. I know.
But we're not going to be going through all of them. I don't have the time. But what we're going to be doing, essentially, we're going to be focusing on compliance, tax compliance. I know that there might be some persons in here who would be familiar with some aspects of that. Because you would be, operating your business. But there might be some who are not so familiar. So, pardon us as we go through. All right. So, in essence, this presentation is really to provide you with some basic tax-related matters that you need to be aware of as a business person. Really, we're focusing on what needs to be done initially, and a little bit of what you need to do, because compliance is not a one-off thing. It is something that you have, it's an ongoing thing. And while you may need to be tax compliant in order to access the funding here, you're going to need to remain tax compliant as you continue, because it will have implications for you getting that PIR that was just mentioned, right? Or to import anything else, right? So the aim here, ladies and gentlemen, is to just help us to not get into the challenges that can come about as a result of non-compliance. And right, so we need tax compliance. It denotes the degree to which a taxpayer does what is required of him under Jamaican tax laws. Right, and essentially, you need it. The first one is what applies to the persons in this room. You needed to access a grant or loan, applying for professional license to the extent that you need to apply, and when you're importing goods, you're accessing government contracts, all of those things, you need to prove that you're tax compliant. Right. Now, how do you know, and how will somebody who asks, are you tax compliant? How will they know if you really are tax compliant? It is when you present to them a tax compliance certificate. And a tax compliance certificate is a certificate that basically says that you have met the obligations under the tax law that you're required to make, right? It's, as you will see there, it does not mean, we prefer to give you a tax compliance certificate if you don't owe anything. But by virtue of you owing some money would not prevent you in and of itself from getting a tax compliance certificate. Right? Once you have an arrangement, so say, for example, you have an outstanding liability, but you have an arrangement in place and you are honoring your obligations under that arrangement, you may be granted a TCC. Right? The application may be made inline or online. If it is done online, it will not be an immediate. There is a 1 to 2 day turnaround time if it is made online. And but if it is made inline, it will be a same day process. The only thing with the same day is that you have to now go to the tax office and wait in line for your number to be called, and that can be a little time consuming. Other thing is, if you are a first time applicant, online is not available to you because for the initial TCC, you need to be interviewed. So we ask that you go into the tax office and for that one. Also, if you are registering a company, a new company, you will be issued with a 3-month TCC at that point, right? But thereafter, you'll be required to visit the tax office and be interviewed for the next one. So if you would have gotten the first TCC from company's office, in order to get the second one, you're required to visit TAG. Don't do that online. Go in person, visit TAG, and have that interview. All right. So the 3 basic pillars of compliance are registration, filing, and payment. This simply means that
you are required to be registered for everything that you're based on your business operation, you're required to be registered for. So, for example, you are film producer, you're required to be, you have employees, you're required to be registered for income tax, GCT, and certainly the payroll taxes. Right? So for in that case, registration, once you're registered for all of those things, plus you need to be registered for e-filing because all of those, in order to account for your payments in respect of all of those and to submit your returns, you need to do those online. And so you will need to have online registrations. Well, could we just step back a little bit? I promise I won't be long. Well, having been registered, you now be required to file returns at particular intervals, be it annually, monthly, GCTs monthly, income taxes annually, or payroll taxes, you'll be doing your monthly filing and then your annual filing. And of course, the payment, don't forget the payment. You're always required. Well, not always. And let me just say, filing a return is not the same as making a payment. When you file a return, you're making a declaration. So your declaration could be, I don't have anything to pay. But there's a penalty for not filing and a penalty for not paying. So if it is that there is, and we do find a lot of taxpayers who probably would not have any tax to pay because they did not file, they end up with the filing penalty being required. Got that? So two separate things, filing and paying. So you're asked to file when you're required to file. Go ahead. Next slide. Next. Okay. So in a nutshell, registration, you're required to be registered for TRN. I know all of us inside here have our TRN. I'll just speak a little bit on that. E-services, business registration, tax type registration. Right, so what's the rationale? For TRN, there's a legal requirement for you to have a TRN, and it is the main identifier. We don't identify persons by names in THA. Our taxpayers are identified based on TRN. Because I guarantee you, if I were to pull up the system and search for Colleen Williams, I'd get screens and screens and screens and screens of Colleen Williams. So we use the TRN, right, as our main identifier. And even other institutions have been using that now, the banks, the insurance companies. For business registration, it formalizes your business operations and inspires stakeholder confidence in your operation. It helps you to secure a business name, allows for advertising in some cases. If you don't have a registered business name, and that, I guess you probably would have had sessions with Companies Office. You're not required, you're not allowed to legally advertise. You don't, get those things in order. For type registration, no, that's a legal requirement if you are not in the business of supplying a service that is subject to GCT and you would have met the criteria for registration. You are legally required to apply for registration. You are in receipt of income, you're earning income, you're required to be registered for income tax. These services, why must you register? Because it facilitates the tax type. You being compliant in respect of your tax bill, because all your returns are now filed online. So you must have the online registration. Okay, so this is not unfamiliar to us. We spoke about that before. I just want to mention the second bullet. So most of us in here, or all of us in here, we have our 9-digit TRN, right, as individuals. Now, to the extent that in our operations as a sole proprietor, we have employees or we're required to be registered for GCT, we also need to have a branch TRN, which means some digits, some additional digits to your main 9-digit TRN. So you will have your 9-digit and then you'll have 4 zeros and a 1 to indicate that as a branch 1, because you would, while you use the 9-digit TRN to report on your personal income, what is the deductions in respect of your employees, those would be reported under the branch 1. And the GCT would be reported under the branch 1. Right. Right, so it does not, being registered for TRN does not impose any tax liability. We did say before that it is your distinct identity, but it does not create a tax liability. And persons who are registered under the TRN system, they still need to be registered for the tax types. All right, so I will not be going through all of this, but most of us would have seen the Form 1, which is the application form for our individual TRN. So to the extent that we need to have branches being registered, we now need to go to the tax office and ask for the additional Form 1. Right? That's the name of the form, additional information form 1, right? And that is what you would fill out to get the branch. Also, if your name has been changed, if when you got the TRN, you were Williams and then you got married, you need to also go back to the tax office and fill out the supplemental information to account for the change in your name or changing whether it be marriage or deed poll or whatever, you know, any change to your personal information. All right, so that is it for that slide. All right, so in terms of the application, you complete you don't need to go through all of that detail. I'll leave this information so you can refer to JAMPRO because I'm mindful of time.
Yes, please.
Yes. And the online, that is how it is done online, but let us move on to the next slide. Right, so in terms of your business registration, the first step in the process is to determine the legal structure, whether it's ownership, sole trade, whether it is sole trade, a partnership, or a body corporate. And the registration requirement will somewhat depend on those. Depend on the structure, the ownership structure. Right. So if you're a sole trader with no employee and you have gross income less than $10 million, with gross income less than $10 million, it means you would not be required to be registered for GCT. So in essence, then in terms of based on that, you need to have your TRN and your e-services. And of course, we'll talk about income tax and GCT later. If you have employees, with employees and income more than $10 million, you need to register the business name, the TRN, NIS, NHD, HART, and those may be done at company's office. The business name registration is valid for 3 years and then you have to renew it. And of course, you always need e-services with all your registration. Go ahead. Next. Okay, so partnership 2 to 20 persons. You need your business name registration, your TRN, NIS, NHD, and those are done at company's office. Again, yes. Next.
company, you need NIS card, NHT. You also get the first PCC for the 3 months. We did say that before. All right, so we're going to be talking now about income tax, and we're going to try to go through it fairly quickly. All right, the registration for income tax is implicit. What that means is that you don't have to fill out an application form to be registered for income tax. This occurs, you would have already been in our tax database by virtue of you having a TRN. So upon the filing of your first return or the payment of income tax or being assessed by us, then you become automatically registered. So persons will say, but I didn't come to tax office and fill out any form. Once you have been assessed or you make a payment or you file a return, the system, and the second bullet there basically says that our system, the cashier system, will pull information from the TRM database and automatically register. Next slide. All right, the duties of the registered taxpayer. You're required to keep proper books and records for 7 years. 7 years. Because that's the statute of limitations as it relates to this, right? You're to keep your records in English. Right? You're to file returns and estimated obligations. You're to pay over tax due, if any, notice, if any, and notify the Commissioner General in writing if there's any change to your status. Now, we have a challenge with this one in that a number of persons would be registered there on our system. They cease to operate and they don't tell us. So they remain on the system and the system is going to assess them because they're expecting nothing has changed. We don't know if it is just that you choose to ignore us. And so the system will continue to assess you and expect to hear from you, expect the filing, right? So I beg you, I'm begging this evening. If it is that you are registered for any tax time and you cease to operate, please notify us so that the account can be closed. The other thing, some persons will temporarily go overseas to study or to do something. Notify us. We can suspend the account. It might be that you don't want it closed, but it can be suspended. So we ask you to, notify us of that. Right. So Jamaica has a self-assessment system which places the responsibility on the income earner to tell us what is happening in their business. Because who knows better about what is happening in your business than you, right? So you are asked to file returns and pay over the taxes at the stipulated times based on what the Income Tax Act says. Right? So that is it. The thing is, if you don't do that, the Commissioner General will assist you by raising assessment. You don't want that. We don't want that either. We don't want that. We prefer if you tell us what is happening in your business. No payment due dates. Every taxpayer shall be on the 15th day of March in every year of assessment compute what their estimated tax is going to be for the year, right? If it is that you estimate what your tax is going to be this year based on what happened last year, the income that you would have made last year, right? If it is that you didn't have any income last year, this is your first year of operation, you estimate based on what you should expect to happen this year. And if there is tax to pay, it is to be paid over in quarterly installments of March, June, September, and December 15th. Now that is to your advantage because what happened is that you're not required at the end of the year to come up with one lump sum to pay. It spreads the payment over time. And that works for both you and the revenue
Because the revenue does not have to sit and wait one whole year to hear from you to get the tax from you. They get it over time. So it works, it's mutually beneficial that it be paid. And the legislation requires that to the extent that any is to be paid, it is to be paid. Next slide. All right, so we spoke about the payment, the estimated payment. Now, this is what requires the estimated return, the estimated obligation. Let me see the hands of those who have heard of SO4A, SO4. Right, SO4, SO4A. Right, this is what is this section that requires the S04A, which is the estimate, which is what sets up the estimate to be paid quarterly. Right, and you're required to file one, except you know that you have no income tax payable, or your income tax payable is on the PAYE system. In that case, you are not required. Okay, all right, so this one now speaks to section 67, speaks to the filing of not the estimate now, but the final return, the S04 or the IT02 for companies. Right? The S04 is for individuals and the IT02 is for companies. It's your annual return. It's your annual final return. And you will see that the IT02 is for individuals. SO4. SO4 is for individuals. Right, and you'll see that the return is to be filed on or before March 15th. So we are in filing season as we speak, and you have until the 15th of this month. Failing that, you'll have some penalties. Go ahead. Right. No, the commissioner, in addition to section 67, the commissioner reserves the right to ask anybody to file a return. And once the commissioner does that, then that return is to be filed within 15 days of the service of the notice. So that one will not be tied to the March 15th, but 15 days after the date. All right, once you're a company, you're required to file a return, whether you have income or not, whether you have started trading. Once you're incorporated as a company, you're required to file a return. Unlike the individual that you're required to file a return only if you have income. It is not so for companies. Once you are a body corporate or a charitable organization, you're required to file a return. In respect of individuals, it is if the minister, subject to negative resolution, that's some procedure for passing law in Parliament, require you to file. But once you are a company, you're required to file. And that is an area where we find a lot of challenges as well, because the company, some companies are not filing. When you call upon them, they say, but we're not trading, we don't have any income. You're still required to file. File a nil return. Right. No, we encourage you to file when you're required to file because there's a penalty. Everything that you're asked to do to be compliant, if you don't do it, there's a penalty. And if you fail to file your annual return, then there's a penalty of $5,000 per month or part thereof for the time that the return remains outstanding. Right? So we don't up to that figure there, we didn't say, right? So we encourage you not to be late with your return because like I said before, you could very well have a nil return, no tax. Right? And then you end up in problems. No, there's also the facility. I must tell you, because I have to balance it. There is a facility for if you have a very good reason for your return to be late and there is penalty and interest. There's a facility in place upon your request that the penalty can be waived. Right? But we're not even going to go there, so we're not, we won't have to ask the commissioner to waive anything. Right, so the returns we had said before, this one is for the self-employed individual, S04 and S0. Once you file the S04, you're required also to file the S04A. And I just want to point out that it may be for the calendar year or a permitted accounting period. So if you don't want to file January to December, you may apply to the commissioner for permission to file on another period.
Okay. You want to take some questions now?
Yes, I'll take some questions now.
Yeah, because I know it's a lot of information, guys. We're gonna share, and no, Sheldon has told the persons in the chat that we're gonna share this presentation, and then I'll also send it to the head of the associations for them to share also. But I think because there's so much information, I'll just kind of have her stop here and then we'll field some questions because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, how do you, are grants taxed?
Yeah.
As taxable income and how much?
Okay. All right, what, you see this whole thing about tax, and I tell you, I have 100 slides, and that is not, it's not quite.
I know, you're trying.
But, as it relates to what is taxable, for income tax, it is income, and it is only income that is stipulated in section 5 of the Income Tax Act. Now, income is something that you earn, you do something for. So it is, you either provide a good or a service for income that is subject to tax on the income tax return. If it is a gift, if it is a grant, what did you do to get it?
You
applied for it. You applied for it.
So that's not income.
It's not income.
Yeah.
You have to give something. There needs to be some consideration. You need to give something for it.
Just to make this question complete. So there are grants, there are sponsors who give money for film production, for instance, and there are investors who invest money and then want returns on it.
Right.
None of this is taxed.
Okay. So, no, listen now, we do have those persons who when they give the grants, they are not the grants, they sponsor.
They want ads.
It is part of you're giving something for it because you give them permission to come to your event and advertise. You give them something, they are getting an economic benefit.
So that's earning.
So that is earning to you.
Okay. And invest.
But if it is earning to the investor, not to you.
No, you're giving something.
No, it's when it's a sponsor giving me to do product placement in the film. So I'm kind of earning this money, right? To place their product in the film. Then in this case, it's earning.
So it is earning because they are getting advertising right. You know, they claim that as expense. No, if it is expense to one individual, it is income to the next.
But then I put the expenses on it and then pay tax on the profit.
Right.
And the investors is different though. If investors are putting money, then it's.
No, if investors are putting money in, then you are required to pay them interest. So there is something, you're going to have to pay them back.
Yes, the whole amount
Plus interest.
Yeah.
Then it's not my earnings.
Right? It's not earning. It's not earning, it's a loan.
Right.
And that goes to your balance sheet. Right.
Right, so loans, no.
Loans, no.
But product placement, yes.
Yes.
For example, for people with TV shows and things like that, whenever you have a company and you're filing your taxes. If you got $3 million to do your TV show from Grace or something, when you're filing your taxes, it's gonna come out of it because it's gonna show that Grace had sent you $2 million for that.
And then we paid so much money to do it, so that.
Yes.
Just related to the grant thing,
But that's
you guys
sponsorship.
need that thing is a grant. What's good for the paperwork proof to have that particular thing is a grant?
But you would have some documentary.
You'd have a JSDI contract.
The contract.
Right, you would have the
Yeah,
contract.
JSDI contract to prove. that
Okay,
it's a
so
grant.
it's proof, so they're not gonna tax us.
Exactly.
Right, but if, you just have monies being lodged to your account and you cannot say where it is coming from, then I assure you, you and the auditors will have a little tussle over that, because then you're going to have to prove that that's not income. And, but for grants and those things, there are usually documentary,
And for JSDI, they will have their contracts.
right.
Approved.
So a Jamaican who is resident overseas, but they have a TRN, they're
Yes.
Jamaican. They're resident overseas, they pay tax overseas, they've never worked in Jamaica, so they've never had income tax liability in Jamaica. They apply. If they need now a TCC, but they've never worked here. Do they then, how do they prove and how do they get a TCC to say they are not liable for
We
tax in
do
Jamaica?
have facilities in place to grant TCC to non-residents. Non-resident come is something we do every day.
Okay.
Right,
So
so,
that person
Would-
right,
is, can get a TCC as an individual applying for the grant.
right. But what are the stipulations though? Is it that, non-residents are eligible
I was
for?
about to answer that before. International persons trying to get, it's under two areas that international or non-residents, non-Jamaican residents can get funding is marketing and distribution and then the rebates.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about
Development.
No, you have to be Jamaican.
Yes, you're Jamaican.
Yeah.
Right. So
There's
you
a
do
right
have, I'm coming to you next. You do have a lot of Jamaicans, and if I were to ask for a show of hands of those of us who have green cards in here, probably more hands will go than.
Right to the hand.
So the thing is, you do have a lot of Jamaicans who are also required to account for taxes in the US or in other countries. But we do have double taxation treaty with about 19 countries, the 19 countries that we mainly do business with. What those double taxation treaties do is to state who has the taxing right in respect of the income.
I wanted to clarify something. You're asking
I'm
about a
asking
right
a
about living
right
in New
of-
York
is
that
the-
is Jamaican. They
Jamaica.
can apply for TCC. We're clear that.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
That's why I asked the question, so that
yes.
those online.
Can know that they
understand
can, yes.
That they can apply for a TCC even if they are not,
Absolutely.
they're never earned a cent
In Jamaica, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
We had those questions too when we were
Right.
active last year and then it came up again in Berlin Alley.
All right.
Can we apply though we just have our passports and we haven't paid tax? But they did.
right, so
We
my
addressed
business,
that.
sorry.
Go ahead.
My business is badly affected by COVID and sole trading because my business needs face-to-face to offer my services. And so when I went to get my TCC, they told me because I do have a full-time job as an educator, I would be using my PAYE to get a TCC for the sole trading ads. My issue was just a couple weeks ago, which I think I really need to talk to somebody, is that because I changed from one educational institution to the next, one campus to the next, my salary became different for the two campuses. I know they're saying, you are short on tax. In other words, you owe tax
That would not be the basis.
to get your TCC for the sole trading, which has not been operational.
Okay, all right, let me just clarify something though. As an individual, there is no, the sole trading is not distinct from your employment. You are seen as one. So if it is that you are employed and you have a business, you have a grocery store, you rent a part of your house or you rent them, you are seen as one. There is no distinction between you and the business.
what I'm hearing here is that you would have had self-employment income and employment income prior to COVID. But as a result of COVID, you were reduced to employment income only. Right, but that is fine. That's not an issue. Right?
Why am I treated differently to say my two salaries have been different? One has now been more than the other.
Right, that is something that I would have to speak with you outside of this forum and we look at documentation. Yes, I'm being told I need to wrap. Yes. Okay.
Quick question about
Oh, that is it?
eligibility.
No, just wrap up. Yes, just.
Okay,
Just
well,
wrap up.
GCT, I'm hearing GCT question. I want to
Just eligibility. When do people have to?
okay, once you're engaged company, well, anybody,
Yeah, but 50 million? If it's
no, not more than it is, no, let me just do a little summary, just that I have the information there. But you're required to be registered for GCT if you're first in a taxable activity. Now, most of what you, persons inside here will be engaged in is considered a taxable activity. There is no list of taxable activities in the GCT Act. What we have is a list of zero-rated items and a list of exempt items. If what you do is not found on the list of zero-rated or the list of exempt, you are subject to tax. Right? Right. So first of all, you need to be in a taxable activity. The second criteria is that you should be earning not less than $10 million for the year, or you would have established over a number of months that you are earning in excess of $833.33 thousand, which is 1/12 of the $10 million. Once you would have established over a number of months that you're earning at that level, then you may be registered for GCT.
Okay, thank you.
Any other GCT questions? Could we just, 1 minute, could you?
No, you are good. No.
I am good. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to the other, right. So before just jumping back to income tax, I'm not going to be long on this because for persons who are not familiar, I would recommend in the interest of time that you go sit with a taxpayer education officer to have them walk you through how the return is done. But in essence, this is the basic structure of the income tax return. You're asked to report your gross income. Then you get to subtract your deductible expenses. Those would be those expenses that are incurred wholly and exclusively in earning the income. So your medical bills would not be part of that unless you are injured on the job. But the car that you drive to go to do the work, the utility bills for your place, those things.
If you're a writer,
Yes.
and you cannot write because you are sick, then if that's in the.
No, it has to be section 13 of the Income Tax Act speaks to expenses incurred wholly and exclusively in earning the income. If you're injured on the job, you would have been injured earning the income. So those medical bills can be claimed. However, if you have hypertension, heart attack, anything else, you could have had those without this income or any income at all, right? So it has to be expenses that are incurred wholly and exclusively in earning the income. You get to also deduct exemptions, right? In section 12 of the Income Tax Act, there are many exemptions that you are entitled, you may be entitled to. You would hear the finance houses announce some tax-free investments, those long-term investments, that when you invest in those, you keep your money, you abide by the rules. After 5 years, the interest that you get on that is exempt. So things like those, right? If you're right. Yes, so you take those and then you arrive at what is called your statutory income. And then from the statutory income, you then account for the threshold. Now, if you're a non-resident, you don't get the threshold. The threshold is only for persons resident in Jamaica. So you get the threshold, then you compute the tax at 25% or whatever rate applies to you. Just want to point out that for companies, the rate of tax is 25%. For the individual, the rate of tax is that the individual has a 3-tiered rate structure. So we have 0, 25, and 30%. So if you earn every dollar up to the threshold is taxed at 0%. Above the threshold, up to $6 million is taxed at 25%. And every dollar in excess of $6 million is taxed at 30%. Right, so after you would have computed what the tax is, you then get credits. And I would really love an opportunity to come back and talk about credits.
Absolutely.
Because those are amounts that are used to reduce the tax payable.
Yeah.
And right now we have the solar credit that is coming on stream. That piece of legislation is almost passed. We have a number of credit, the employment tax credit for those persons who have employees and all of those, which I like to balance the books. While I'll tell you what you need to pay, I'm also going to tell you of the incentives and the benefits that are available. Right.
Or do you stop paying taxes?
There is no age limit to there is no upper limit to the payment of income tax. Because the income, the tax is not on the individual, but on the income. Remember, we said before that it is the income. So as long as you have taxable income, you continue to pay income tax. However, for NHT, you stop paying NHT at 65. You stop paying education tax on employment income at 65. You stop paying NIS at your deemed age of 70.
Yeah.
Right. So,
We can just wrap.
yes.
Yes. Last slide, you want to go to your.
On GCT, so just scroll through GCT. I think we would have covered this slide already.
Yeah.
That you must be involved in a taxable activity. We covered that one as well. This one might be of interest to you. You may be provisionally registered before you actually start your business. But if you, for GCT, once you intend to be in a taxable activity, you may apply for JSDI registration. But that is something you'd have to write to head office. You don't show up at the tax office to get provisionally registered. You need to write to TAJ's head office for that. Registration. So you'll be issued with a certificate. You're issued with a certificate and you're required to display that certificate. Forced registration is an issue. If you are required to be registered and you're not so registered, you did not apply for registration, we may force register you and we go back to the date at which we would have observed that you should have been registered. We can also cancel registration and notify the person in writing that the registration has been canceled.
Yes.
Again, we ask that you notify us if your status has changed. That is a requirement for all tax types, right? And of course, we have some penalties which you can read about. We're not going down the road of getting there. We're going to be compliant upfront, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, right, and again, we would have gone through this for income tax, pretty much the same. Right, you're supposed to charge the tax. For GCT registration, while we said for income tax registration, it is implicit, but GCT is explicit. You need to go and fill out a form and apply for your GCT. Now, the form on here, this is just here to tell you that there are many different forms. The one that would be applicable to the persons, everybody inside this room, is the form 4A. There's nothing else on there. This is just to say that there are other forms. but it is the Form 4A that if you're a registered taxpayer, you'll be required to complete. Okay.
And of course, you're required to file your return monthly, GCT return monthly on the last working day. Now, what is a working day? A working day is any day other than a holiday or a weekend.
We have, I know I saw Daniel Debole online. Hey, Daniel. So-
Hello.
So Daniel is going to be doing like a fireside chat. Daniel, do you have any slides to present? No, right?
No
No,
slides.
just chit chatting with Daniel. So we have an hour with Daniel, and I just want to say thanks before we get to the end. I know he's busy. And I met Daniel when I was in Berlin, and there was a fireside chat that we had with JAMPRO, and it was so insightful. And I said I wanted Daniel to come and join us for a sensitization session, and I kind of like said, please, and he's like, okay. I was a little bit annoyed, but he did say yes. And I think I want to start by saying I have a couple questions that I think we can start with, right? Based on the conversations I've had with Daniel. I want you to give me an overview of what your job is, one. I also want you to tell me, because you've been going to the markets, right? And I
Correct.
think everybody in here and those online want to find out, what are you looking for, right? How can I get my films and the films that are going to be produced out of the Jamaica Screen Development Initiative, right? Based on grants and the loans. How can I get these films in your hand and what it is you're looking for? I'm sure everybody has that question, right? And then I also want to find out, I had some notes written down about open AI and of course Sora that I know that you mentioned.
Yeah.
What you would be thinking about in terms of Sora. I know that's an additional competition for us. How do we deal with that, and how is it that we can create creatively, have products presented that are business savvy? And I know the creatives, we get kind of, oh my God, this is my IP, and I want to hold on to the script. But I want you to be frank and honest to us as we are developing creative industry. And I know that you are one of those execs that are going around and looking for content. So I'll just hand over to you now, and then everybody in the audience can just kind of, if you want to go get some snacks, just take your time, since it's just a fireside open chat. Yeah? All right, go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I guess what I'm looking for when I buy a movie is not if the movie. I'm gonna say some stuff here that I'm not supposed to say, but this is how I talk.
No, it's okay. It's a safe place. First, Daniel, I want you to, I know I had like 4 questions that I shot at you first, but firstly, just give me an overview. I didn't want to read a bio for you. I want you to tell them what you do for your day job.
So what I'm looking to do is buy. Hi, my name is Daniel. What I'm looking to do is buy movies for the studio. And so in my division, and so like a studio like Sony is a huge worldwide enterprise with its own infrastructure and et cetera, et cetera. So it's like there are offices all around the world that are kind of doing a version of what I'm doing, which is buying movies for the studio. But so when you hear someone say, one second, I can hear you. So like when you hear someone say worldwide acquisitions, just give me 1 second.
Somehow can make louder.
You trying to turn off your computer, Daniel?
I'm trying to turn off you guys because I can hear you guys. Hold on. Can you guys still hear me? You guys can still hear me, right? Okay. I might have muted you, Venetia, but I'll unmute you, I promise. What's it called? Yeah, I mean, when I go to the market, what I'm looking for is a movie with a clear audience. That's like the number one thing that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for that even before and more than trying to figure out if a movie is good or not, if that makes sense. So I'm looking for if there is a market for it. I'm not looking for if the movie is the most artistic movie and I'm not looking for if I enjoy the movie or if the movie is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm looking for if the movie will have any business in it. That's what I'm looking for. The other thing that I'm looking for is, well, if I do think the movie is going to have any business in it, I have to answer a question that my boss is going to ask of me, which is, how is someone going to find this movie? And that's a marketing question. So sometimes, and I say sometimes, I say this intentionally, but like sometimes there's a relationship between a movie being good and it having a market, there being a market or a customer who wants to watch this movie. Sometimes there is a relationship between those two things. Actually, most of the time there isn't. There are many, many, many good films that I see all the time that are just not marketable. Like it's just very difficult for us to assume that someone will find the movie. So it's like keeping that in mind, and I think it's good for filmmakers to keep that in mind because it's like when someone is passing on their movie, they're not passing on you personally. They're not even passing on if you're a good artist. They're not passing on any of that. They're really just kind of passing on the fact that they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to sell it. It's like making that's why they pass on it. But yeah, that's like a quick overview on what I look for and what I do every day. I might have muted you on the Teams, so you might have to unmute whoever's manning that computer.
Can I ask Daniel?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm not
yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard what his organization / company.
Oh, you wanted to find out about Sony and what he does at Sony? Oh, Danielle, I think they didn't hear explicitly what your day job is. What do you do for Sony?
So my day job explicitly is I look for movies though to buy for the studio. So I look for independent films that don't have distribution rights yet. I'm looking to buy those rights on behalf of the studio.
And at what stage do you do that, Daniel?
I look at projects that are at the package stage. So that means that there's a script and there's someone attached. And then I look at it when it's like a fully finished film or when it's still in post-production. As long as there's some cast elements attached and it's available for me to buy.
My question is, does attachment matter to you?
Yeah, so attachment matters because it answers that question, how is someone going to find this movie, which is a marketing question. So that's why cast always matters, because I know you want to, people want to think, Sheldon, please mute the people. Yeah. People want to, I agree. So people want to think that so people want to sometimes think that, you could just cast the best person in the role, and always the best person in the role will be enough to find an audience. And while I wish that were the case, that's just not the case oftentimes. So that's why cast attachments matter.
Hi, I just wanted to know if there's specific target audiences that Sony mostly is interested in.
So because Sony's a studio,
Target
it
audience
functions.
that you look for, Daniel, and your bosses
No.
at Sony.
No, so acquisitions is different because acquisitions at Sony, right? We're looking for, is there a audience? So we're looking at the entire marketplace and we're saying to ourselves, can we feed that audience? So it's not, so then what we're looking for is who are the audiences that we in the past are better at servicing, or we in the past, we've had success servicing, so we're going to try it again. Like those are the target audiences. So for example, like BET, their mission statement is we're gonna like make content for Black audiences. Sony doesn't operate that way. Sony's like a major conglomerate with a bunch of different divisions. So like it has one division that focuses on horror. It has another division that focuses on Christian movies. It has another division that focuses on international movies. It has another division that focuses on smaller art house independent divisions. So at Sony, we're just looking and I would say in most acquisitions execs, there are different kinds of acquisitions execs, but most acquisitions execs, their job is just to identify, is there a market, period. And so then when it's, I guess the one caveat of that I could say is, if there's any audience or demographic that we're drilling down, it's who are the people that are who are the people spending money on movies? So sometimes when people say like, oh, content's not diverse enough, I disagree with this premise. I think content really is diverse. It just doesn't live always where you want it to live. So for example, Black people in America, I'll talk specifically about the Black experience in America, right? In America, Black people can find all kinds of content to watch. They just may not find it at the theater, at the movie theater, which means that like content for Black audiences lives in TV, it lives on the internet, it may live on demand, it may live in these windows that aren't going physically to the theater and watching a movie. But it doesn't mean that diverse content isn't out there. It just exists elsewhere. So it's like for us, because we make money when audiences go to the theater or they transact on something or it goes through one of our TV deals. What we're looking for is what content can we get that audiences who physically go to the theater will spend money on, and what content can we deliver that audiences who are transacting at their house on a video on demand rental or purchase, what can we get for them, or what audience or what product do people like to program on TV in their later windows? What product like that can we look for? Those are the things that we look for.
Ask you next one. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can
Hi,
hear you.
Irina. My question is related to how to reach you as a person who's doing acquisition. For instance, some streaming platforms like Netflix, like you can't actually reach them directly. You have to go through a distribution company or through an agent that works for another agent who works for a distribution company, and then they would reach them. So how does that work with Sony specifically?
I mean, I would argue that film people are actually very, very accessible. It's just that like we won't return everybody's phone calls because not everybody's phone calls is worth returning. So for example, I'll give you an example. I'm a buyer, so I always am looking for things to buy. And there are a few buyers, so I'm in competition with other buyers on finding something to buy, right? I've made myself very accessible because I don't want there to be any barriers between a filmmaker and myself. So literally, you could find me on Instagram and DM me. You could find my LinkedIn page and connect with me and message me. And for the most part, I'll say yes, I'll connect with you, all of these things. Let's see, we have a question here from Victoria. Cool. Aren't all movie-going audiences dwindling? How has that shifted acquisitions to your profit? I'll answer that actually. So it's like I'm very, very, very accessible. The thing is it's less so about access and about making something that someone really wants to buy. So I would argue that if you don't have talent, like if you're making a movie and there's no cast, then instead of focusing on the access and getting there, then the number one thing is just to make it completely remarkable and undeniable so that you can send like 5 minutes of it to somebody and then they're like, oh, I have to see what next. Like I have to. That's kind of how it really has to work for you to cross over. I mean, the other comparison I can make is like in music, there's actually a lot of access, probably nowadays more than ever because of the internet, for you to discover a musician. Really, it's about how do you make it undeniable so that like they will listen, they can't stop listening. And that's like a different task. That's what I would argue. And so it's like, and in terms, so it's like I think getting to us is actually really easy. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, You could look up acquisitions and then type in a studio exec, and you can find them on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and find their email address. I think the access is less the interest is less the challenge and more so making it something that they are interested in buying. Now, Victoria asked something, aren't all movie-going audiences dwindling? How has this shifted acquisition studio profit models? Yes, all yes, in terms of movie going, so that's people who go to the theater to see a movie at the theaters, are they dwindling? That is true. That is absolutely the case. How has that shifted acquisition studio profit models? What that's done is that's made us more hesitant to take risks on first-time filmmakers, and it makes us more hesitant to take risks on movies that don't have cast. Because it seems like the people who actually go to the movies, the audiences that are still movie going, they only respond to things that have celebrities in them. The only people who watch movies and they don't need celebrities to watch them are Christians. Christians will literally watch the worst movie you've ever, I can't say that. Christians will watch a movie that doesn't have the same production value as another movie and doesn't have the same budget and doesn't have the same cast, but they'll watch it because it's a good story and it's inspirational and it supports like the message. They'll go and see that movie in theaters, an independent film. It's like Christian films are actually really grassroots marketing, more so than any other kind of independent film. Secular people need celebrities. They think that they're more classy and that they're more literate and they're smarter than Christians, but no, secular people need celebrities and pretty people to watch movies. But a Christian faith-based audience will actually watch a movie when there's no cast. You could just look at it last year. There was a movie called Sound of Freedom. I mean, Jim Caviezel's, I guess, a movie star, but he's not really a movie star. And it's like faith adjacent, so it's not really a faith-based movie, but it targeted towards that audience. And it did better than Mission Impossible, which has Tom Cruise, who's a real movie star. He's definitely more of a movie star than Jim Caviezel. So it kind of shows you that people can be activated in the faith-based market without a movie star, without a celebrity.
I'll open the mic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you find that it's better to lean heavily into a genre of film, like say a horror or a comedy, rather than kind of like, bigger, more drama or anything like that?
Well, I see another question here. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So I would say every film has its own logic, and every, like, kind of like a business, everything has its own logic and own metrics for success. So I would say, like, if you know that there's a market for something, you should just make it. That's first off. If your market is, oh, I want to break into the international film market, if that's your question, and that's what I'm kind of able to bring my own experience in, given what I see and what I'm supposed to look for, I would say that if you're based in the Caribbean and you're trying to make a movie that has no celebrities in it, I would not make a comedy, because comedy doesn't travel internationally, because those sensibilities differ from country to country. So what Caribbeans will find funny is not going to land on what in Greece. So if your goal is to make international movies that are going to break through, don't make comedies. If your goal is to make a movie that's going to break through at the international marketplace and you don't have cast, my recommendation would be to make a science fiction movie or a horror film. I would actually say make a horror film, because horror is one of those genres where people from all over the world will watch it. They get scared by the same things. If you're playing with Christian or Catholic iconography, then that's very global. People can kind of have a common awareness of that. I've seen, like, there's a South Korean movie about becoming a vampire called Thirst. I watched that even though I didn't speak Korean or know any of the cast, because it's like genre travels as well. It travels across cultures, being scared of stuff. That's what I would recommend. So if I were a filmmaker trying to cut through into America, and my background was Jamaica or Trinidad, I'm Trinidadian, I think that making an Obia movie is a no-brainer. And I know for a fact that Obia travels and is global, because Pirates of the Caribbean, that Disney franchise, is literally just Caribbean culture repackaged for white people. It literally is. There's literally a character in the movie called Calypso. Like, and it's all about these pirates and these tales. They've westernized it and they've colonized it. They've done whatever, but it's a global product. Pirates of the Caribbean with our folklore and our myths and our traditions like that. It travels. It's just they put white people in it, and that's how they made that thing a movie. I would argue like the way to do that is make something about the Caribbean and make it horror. And then when you have horror, you can't just make a horror. It has to actually be scary. And it's because horror is execution dependent. So what I would do is I would get a DP, the best DP you could find. If you have to fly in a DP from Germany, do it. If you have to fly in a college student, like a grad student from California, from Texas, from Austin, because the number one thing is you want the movie to look professional. And so it's like having it look professional, having it shot on the right lenses, having everybody acknowledge the 45-degree rule, having everybody know what it means to, start with a wide and go in and not breaking the line, all these little film school stuff. If you can find somebody, either you find them locally or either you fly them in. It's like you just have to find them. They have the equipment, or you rent the equipment and you pay some insurance on the equipment, but it's not a lot of money to make a movie. And then it's just about having the vision and sticking to the genre, because once you have that genre, you have a market because you have a horror market. That would be my 2 cents. Or you make an action movie because action travels well. A punch lands the same in every continent. Keisha asked, Daniel, how do you find having a market? Is there a correlation between cost of moving and the number of people you expect to see it? Also, do you look for smaller projects with existing budget, or is it purely a judgment call? Okay, so I'll break this down. A market is if there's people willing to pay for it. That's a market. There is a correlation between cost of the movie and the number of people you expect to see it, because you can kind of expect you can expect that if you spend more money on a movie, this isn't a hard and fast rule, right? If you spend $100 million to give brand, like if you give $100 million to who's the world's least popular person of all time? If you give $100 million to Kanye West, right? And you film him and doing nothing, let's say, and you spent $100 million on that movie, Amy Schumer, best, great. So let's say someone said Amy Schumer. So Keisha said Amy Schumer. If you give Amy Schumer $100 million to make a movie, yes, you've spent a lot of money on that movie, but it doesn't mean a lot of people are going to see it. So it's like, that's not a hard and fast rule. However, here's where I will say that there's a rule. Typically, when you spend more money on stunts or celebrities and cast, that's usually where most of your money is going to go. Locations, very luxurious locations. Typically, if you spend money on the most prettiest famous people, explosions, and the best locations, we could typically expect that movie to be more marketable than something else. So it's not as if you can just say like, oh, he spent more money on that movie, it's going to be a hit. I think maybe Bob Marley, they spent $70 million on that movie. But at the same time, there have been movies that they probably spent less money and that made more money than Bob Marley. It really depends per movie, right? It's not necessarily like, oh, just because we spent this money, we're going to get this. There have been some movies where they cost $200 million, and I would have paid money just to see a pile of $200 million rather than seeing the movie that they made. So it's like, it really depends. All right, next question.
All right, there's a question inside.
Yes.
What was the question? Go ahead.
Hi, 1 second. Can you unmute? Yeah.
It's on me. Go ahead.
Yeah. The question is, if, for example, I have a film already sponsored by someone, all right? So I'm making a film, so I'm getting with a ready-made product to you, but it was sponsored or there was some product placement in a film. Is it still okay? And would you be able to acquire such a film if everything else is on?
Yeah, I could acquire movies that have product placement. That's fine. I mean, as long as there's a market for the film, we will buy it. I mean, and the movies we make, like the movie that Sony makes, they'll put product placement in their movie. And in the last Madame Web movie, which nobody saw because it made no money because it looked terrible. I'm not supposed to say that, because that's another example of a movie that they spent a lot of money on that no one wanted to see. the third act of that movie involves like the villain being crushed by like a Pepsi can, right? Like, and he dies. Like people like product. We like product placement in movies because it brings the cost down. And theoretically, here's the thing with sponsorship and product placement. If we know a movie has a lot of product placement, we're like, well, you got that product placement to cover the budget. So that means that we don't have to cover the budget, which means that it just makes it so that we don't have to spend that much money on the film. That's kind of how we look at like soft money. Like if someone says like, oh, my movie got these grants or it got this product placement or I got this money from this, you're just letting me know, oh, you didn't spend this much money to get to that number. So I don't have to spend that much money to get to that number. It's kind of like if you were to sell a house and you tell me, well, actually all of the construction in the house, I had a bunch of child slave labor do it. Like it didn't cost me anything. That's just a crazy, it's a crazy example. But then if I'm going to spend money to give you the house, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to spend, you didn't spend any money on the house, so I'm not going to spend any money in the house either. It's kind of like that. So it's like sometimes you don't want to tell people I got all this sponsorship to like subsidize the cost. You really only want to tell that information to somebody if it helps illustrate to me that there's a market for the film. So I would actually argue, let's say you made a movie with Pepsi. If you were to say, but Pepsi's going to help me promote the movie, then you should mention it to me. But you really shouldn't mention to me like, oh, Pepsi helped me make the movie, because it really doesn't have any relevance over if people want to see your movie or not, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. But then if it's sponsorship and I just show it like this film is sponsored by, like, or their logo somewhere like at the start or at the end, like, produced by such and such film production company and sponsored by that, just to name the brand, would that be fine, or you would require this to be cut out?
It would totally be fine. It would totally be fine. But I will say that it would probably totally be fine. I will say that if there are any issues, then these just get sorted out through like a crazy legal business affairs process after the deal or while the deal is being made. So there will be hours of conversations between the lawyers about which logo should come first, who gets what credit, a lot of wasted time. But like that'll all be hashed out by the lawyers. Keisha asked, sorry, at what point do you acquire the movie? Once it's fully made in development, a short film that wants to become a movie? I look at movies when there's cast elements attached. That's the earliest that I look at a movie. So that means that if there's a cast attached to a script and there's a director and there's a budget and there's producers who know what they want and they know where they're going to shoot it, and where they're going to shoot a movie is important because it implies the finance scheme of the movie. If that's all taken care of, then I look at a movie. So that's for me. And then I could also look at it if it's fully made. But basically, the earliest I could take a look at it is when there's cast. Other divisions, so like development companies or smaller production companies or other development labels at a studio, they'll look at a movie in development stage. They might look at a short film and they might want to option it. Other divisions specialize in that. I'm an acquisitions executive. So the role of an acquisitions executive is to come in the process as late as possible.
What about exclusivity? Like, does it have to be, if you are acquiring this film, can this film be also sold on Amazon, let's say, or like Hulu or something? Or does it have to be just this?
So,
and that's it.
Every deal is there, so there are no rules to this, right? Every deal is different. Every deal is an agreement. It's like a relationship. Some people want to be in polyamorous relationships. Some people want to be in monogamous relationships. Some people are in relationships they don't want to be in. Some people are in relationships and they want to cheat on the person. It's like every relationship is different. In the case of like movies, right? In the case of movies, there's a lot of scenarios. So how do I explain this? This is a complicated thing. Okay, so your movie has rights, right? Your movies has rights, multiple levels of rights. This is why movies are a good product and good business to get into when you make something people want, because it's a product that once you make it, you can sell it over and over and over again forever. That's why it's a good product. But the caveat is there's rules, there's laws in every way that you could sell it. So you can make a movie and there's one window to sell it, right? You can sell it in theaters. When you sell a movie to someone for it to be in theaters, typically that's an exclusive thing, the exclusive distributor. But again, it's exclusive depending on the territory. So like you can make a movie and you can make a movie and then sell the rights in America, but then you could sell it to a different person who has a right to sell it in France. And then you could sell it to a different person who has a right to sell it in Egypt or whatever, right? And that's just at the theater level. Then you can take that same movie, and after it's in theaters, you can then say, well, this person between the months of January and September have the right to distribute it on TV in Egypt, and this person doesn't, and whatever. Like that, it all depends. You could have a non-exclusive right, you could have an exclusive right, you could have a right for theaters but not anywhere else, you could have a right for everywhere else but not theaters, you could have a right for TV but nowhere else, you could have a right for, it's really all depends. It's like a romantic relationship. You set the limitations on how you want it to be distributed. It really depends.
Go ahead.
What is
Go
your
ahead.
current opinion on the marketability of Caribbean films in the industry right now, with or without attachments? Is there an inherent interest out there that exists, or is it something that will need to be cultivated by way of the right script or product? It's the latter. It's something that needs to be cultivated by way of the right script or product. There is no inherent interest in Caribbean film, if I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't exist. And I hate to say it, but this is just the reality. And I have to say this bluntly because it's like when I was in Berlin, apparently it was controversial for me to say some of the things I said. But the fact that those were controversial, it's like that means that we're so in a different world than what other people are operating in when it comes to making movies and actually wanting to make money off of it. So this is what I mean. When I had used this analogy at the panel and people didn't like it, but I'm going to stick by it because this is my daily experience. If I go to my boss and I say, oh man, slavery is such a bad thing in American history. It was really tough, boss. I think we should make a movie about slavery so that we could really dissect the issues of slavery in America. He is going to tell me that there is a market for that and that he will finance that movie. That's the reality of America, right? Even though I don't want to see that movie, there's a market for that. And so he'll sell that movie to people. Even though I don't want to see that movie, and you know what? Black people will go see that movie because niggas is dumb. We will go see The Color Purple. We will go see 12 Years a Slave. We will go see all these terrible movies about ourselves. I don't know why we like to do this. And like directed by like white and Jewish people too. We'll just go see these movies about us being like, no, massa. Fucking Barry Jenkins won the, I really shouldn't be saying this. Barry Jenkins won the Oscar, and the next year he was directing for Amazon, right? Owned by the richest guy in the world, a whole show about slavery. So it's like, that's what white liberals are interested in. They're interested in watching shows about black people being terrible. That's what they're interested in. Now, if you want to, that's what that means. So then when people say like, oh, is there a market for this? Like there's a market for a guy in Romania to turn his brain off and watch Bruce Willis shoot a bunch of people and the movie makes no sense for 2 hours. There's an inherent, like when you use that phrase, inherent interest, that's inherent interest. Inherent interest is exploitative. Inherent interest is there's a guy in South Korea or Japan who doesn't have access. This is terrible what I'm about to say. Who doesn't have access to porn the way we do. And erotic thrillers sell amazingly in certain parts of Asia because there's inherent interest to go see that. Like things that have inherent interest are things where it's like exploitative. Like you can't turn your brain off from it. So for Caribbeans, and now to get back of it, I'm ranting because I'm so aggravated by like that's the state of people. Like the enemy is not us in the studio. The enemy really is the audience. It's the audience and how lowbrow the audience is. So it's like you have to then, I would argue that it's going to take a time to transition people from even knowing that there's Caribbean films. And the best way to do that is horror and action, I think. Because the other overcome you have is the accents. Sorry, they're waving at me. I'm ranting. Okay.
To be to answer Sheldon's question, and then I have two questions inside. Sheldon, go back to your chat. I think that's what it says about
what advice would you give What advice would you give to Caribbean creatives who need a mentality shift to balance need to be creative and a need to be commercial? Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, this is my 2 cents. And just remember that this is only my opinion. A lot of people don't like me for my opinion. Literally every single ex-girlfriend I have can confirm that they don't like my opinions. Okay, I would argue that the best, what advice would you give who need a mentality shift? What advice would I give? I guess the best advice I would give is, you know what? This is the best advice. Go to do your own research, right? If you're going to be in business, right, you would do your research. Go on Netflix, go on HBO, look at the movies that are not in English and look at what genre those movies are and why they're on your TV. So like example, a movie like Parasite, right? Why is that on your TV? Now that movie really did it had Oscar attention, yes. It also has like one of the best filmmakers in the world. Yes. It's also really fucking good. Yes. It's also about really topical things at the moment, which was like class warfare, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that you have to make a Caribbean movie that's the equivalent of that. It's like, what's the equivalent of a movie that it's topical, it's the craft is really high, and also and also it could get some awards attention. Now you can't look at Park Chan-wook because the South Korean film industry is so much more developed than the Caribbean film industry. But you can start to answer like, why is this crossing over? Like when you listen to music, where you like listening to music from other languages, like I like listening to music from other languages. I like listening to it because there's something here that is cutting through and it's translating that I'm not getting in my own music. So like I might listen to Indian music because I'm hearing voices and sounds and rhythms that I'm not hearing in my own music. So it's like that's the thing that's crossing over. So I guess the advice I would give is, how do you make it something that you can't ignore? How do you make it something it's the what's the phrase that my mentor used? Undeniable. You have to make something that's undeniable. Like it can't be something that you should want to watch this because you want to be smarter. Like, no, it has to be something where like I put it on and after 5 minutes, if I take it off, you get upset that I took it off. That's something that's undeniable. Okay, I heard Donnie Glover wanting to make a film on Toussaint literature. I think a lot of people want to see more stories of Black triumph. Would Sony be open to stories like this? Yes, we would be. 100%. Yes. Nice, undeniable. Okay, thank you, Keisha.
Open. Okay. Hi, Daniel. Thank you for being with us. Paramount took a big risk, I think, in not putting subtitles on the Marley movie. Why do you think it has worked for them and not been a deterrent, even with pretty strong Jamaican accents?
I would argue that the movie's accents are not that strong. And then I would also argue that you can kind of tell that the movie's accents aren't that strong because it's, if I remember correct, the cast is like, it's not just Kingsley Benadir, but Loretta Lynch, right? Those are the two main leads of that movie, and those are British actors. I would argue that the accents in that movie aren't strong. That's why I think that that movie works, and also that's what I would argue. You could probably disagree with me on that, but I mean, when I look at other Trinidadian movies, like look at that movie Cheese, Damien McConnell movie, he has subtitles in that movie, and like for a reason. I would argue that the movie doesn't have thick accents. Lashana Lynch, there you go, Lashana Lynch, but she's a British actress, right? She was in James Bond, so I would argue that that movie doesn't have thick accents. And then I would say too, if you're gonna make a movie and yeah, you would have to make it knowing like, oh, this audience is not gonna get everything. They're not gonna get all the slang. But there's a way to do that. I mean, like for example, The Wire is a movie in America where it's like it takes place in Baltimore, and the black people in Baltimore have a very specific regional dialect and slang, and they don't subtitle that show. And I guess there's so much context in the scenarios, and the show is kind of geared towards a more educated audience. So it doesn't have subtitles and it works, and even when you feel like you don't know what's going on, that's part of the experience of feeling dropped in a situation where you're not there. I would argue that in Marley, the accents aren't that thick, but I could be wrong, and you could disagree with me there.